Hi, it's Lizzie from Indianapolis here at Dragon Tree Knits, and this is today's episode of Reading with Lizzie. This episode, we will be going over the books that I have read already in September. We will be looking at the books that I am currently reading, and we will be going over the books that I originally planned to read in September, but that plan might be changing, so I don't know how many of them I'm actually going to get to. And let's get started. Book one that I read was Satan's Affair by H.D. Carlton. This is the prequel to the Cat and Mouse duet, which is Haunting Adeline and Hunting Adeline. This is technically zero point 0.5 in the series. I gave this 3.5 stars. It was bloody and gory and violent with some very off the charts graphic erotic scenes mixed throughout it all. I know my limits. They're high when it comes to things like this. I honestly did not think that I would find a book that would surpass those limits. However, this one very much was a big old no for me. It is only 180 pages. I had to put it down multiple times and just kind of like breathe and get myself calmed down so that I could continue reading it. I also was not a fan of the ending. It felt very abrupt and insincere. I don't know if we're ever going to get back to Sibby, this character. If not, then it's really bad. If we do kind of circle around and we get to, see her again or whatever, then that'll help a little bit. I did read this for the TBR Harvest Readathon prompt black cover, as well as the hardest reading challenge you'll ever do prompt by the hundreds, and this is in the 100 slot. Next is Where's Molly, also by H.G. Carlton. It is in the same universe as the Cat and Mouse duet. It's not technically a part of the series. The author said to read this after Haunting Adeline and Hunting Adeline. However, the friend that I borrowed this from said that I will enjoy the series exponentially if I read Satan's Affair, Where's Molly, Haunting Adeline, Hunting Adeline. So that's what I'm doing. Again, this is very dark, very bloody, gory, and violent. But I give this one 4 stars instead of 3.5. There's just something about it that was less ick producing than Satan's Affair was. There were still one or two scenes that made me set the book down and just be like, oh, ugh. However, overall, much better. I enjoyed the characters more. I enjoyed the story more. Molly and Cage feel like real people almost. They felt more like well rounded. The story itself was more realistic than Sibby's. And they had a layer of sweetness to them that you don't often see in dark romance books. So there's that. I did read this for the hardest reading challenge you'll ever do, prompt in the 100s for the 200 slot, because this was just over 200 pages. Book 3 was Finding Faith by Bridget E. Baker. It is the first book in the Finding Home series, and I gave it 3.75 stars. And it is, well, if Satan's Affair and Where's Molly is here on the darkness spectrum, this is off the screen. It's like a mile down the road. It's sickeningly sweet. It's a Christmas romance novel. The cover I had was just like a door covered in ivy. So it did not look like a Christmas book. However, as you can see, this one has nutcrackers and a wreath on the door. If I had bought this cover, I would have known that it was Christmas, and I would not have read it as part of a Halloween readathon. But there it is. So Very sickeningly sweet. It's not a Christian romance novel. However, it's very, very close. And I would be surprised if this was not already a movie on the Hallmark Channel. I really should look that up at some point. The main characters are Mary and Luke. They pretty much had an instant love. The whole thing, of course, it takes place right before Christmas. Maybe 6 weeks, 8 weeks, somewhere in there. So very, very quick. However, the author has said that we are not done with Mary and Luke. So I guess at some point in the rest of the series, we will like circle back and meet up with them again. There is a third act breakup. Boo. But it is solved in like 2 days. So yay. I read this for the TBR Harvest Readathon prompt Leaves on the cover, as well as the hardest reading challenge you'll ever do prompt last 10 years, because this was published in 2018. Book 4 was Someone You Can Build a Nest In by John Wisfell. It is a standalone, unfortunately, because this universe deserves to be explored to the nth degree. I gave this 5 stars. However, if I could, I would give it like 10 stars, 12 stars. It's beautiful. It's so good. The universe feels well developed, even though we only see like one teeny tiny portion of it. The world building feels robust. Just the way that John writes is beautiful. The descriptions are great. The dialogue is top tier. It's just really gorgeous. This one is a fantasy horror romance. It is about Sheshan, who is a shapeshifter who falls in love with a human woman, whose family just so happens to be trying to kill her. Just little tiny little obstacle. It's nothing to it. It'll be fine, right? Right? I think so. They do spend the whole book trying to learn how to be themselves. Not only is, Sheshan a shapeshifter and is always hiding her true self, uh, but it's trying to be humane in the best way possible. Um, While it is a sapphic romance, there are no sex scenes. And as a matter of fact, I would consider both of these characters asexual. The word is never used, but based on context clues and we actually have the point of view of Seisheshen, asexual, 100%. I read this for the hardest reading challenge you'll ever do, spooky creatures, specifically shifters. All right, the next book I read was Marked by Bridget E. Baker. Yes, the same person who wrote Finding Faith. This is the first of her series, Sins of Our Ancestors. I gave it 3.75 stars. It probably would have been higher if I had read it 6 or 7 years ago when it came out. However, I'm finding it harder to connect with characters who are under 18. And these guys are like 17, 18, maybe. One of them is 16 for most of the book. So, yeah, it's rough. It is a dystopian novel that follows the breakout of a virus that wipes out millions upon millions of people around the world. Sound familiar? However, this one does kill pretty much every child who gets it if they have hit puberty. Now, if they get it before they hit puberty, they're fine until they hit puberty, and then they die within 3 years. So the government creates a puberty blocker and gives it to all the children left alive. This is to be taken continuously until they find a cure because it stops them from aging. So yes, there are like 30-year-olds running around in 12 or 13-year-old bodies. It becomes an issue later on in the book. The main character is not marked. She is not sick, but I swear it's only because of her suredom look. It's only because she has that plot armor going on. There is, of course, a love triangle because what would a specifically dystopian YA novel be in 2018 if it didn't have a love triangle of some sort? She is crushing on two different guys. This is, as I said before, the first in the series. I am going to attempt to read the rest of the series because, despite the characters being very annoying, the story itself is interesting and intriguing. I did read this for the TBR Harvest Readathon prompt Animal because my cover has a butterfly on it, as well as the hardest reading challenge you'll ever do prompt, Challenge Yourself, where I am trying to read books that start with every letter of the alphabet if I already own them, because my digital library is like 1,400 strong, so we're trying to work through that. Next book I read was Succubus Lips by Lena Jubilee. It is the first of the Succubus Sirens series. It's so hard to say. I gave this a 3 stars. This is a reverse harem, which I'm normally down for, but this was not really it. The book starts off like it's already in the middle of the series. It feels like I should have read 2 books prior to reading this one. So it was very discombobulating at the start. It made it really, really hard to get into the book. So the world is separated into the Natchez, the humans who are born with superpowers, and those who are not born with superpowers. And then the Natchez are also separated into 2 groups, the Renegades, who are the bad guys, and the Veras, who are the good guys. Of course, our main character is a Vera, because of course she is. Um, her power, her power is to boost other Natchez powers by kissing them. If she kisses them, they get like a 5 to 15 minute boost. However, if they do the dirty, they get a boost for an entire day. So, yes, she is then used and passed around by the entire male team so that they can all get a nice little boost. Uh, yeah, yeah. Also, she gets used by one of the renegade guys because he was a Vera and he left to become a renegade, but they still have a connection. So, of course, he still gets a boost. However, the Renegades and the Veras do band together to fight the Nelians, who are super hot elven aliens who are attacking Earth for no reason whatsoever. The humans have no idea what it could be. Why are they attacking us? Don't worry, we do find out the reason. The main character goes on a rescue mission to the Nelian planet, and her and the Nelian prince have to run away, and they get lost in a cave system, and well, he doesn't listen to the word no because he can smell that she is turned on. Yes, literally, that she says no like 3 or 4 times, and he's like, no, it's okay, I can smell that you're turned on, you can't lie to me. And she just can't say no to it anymore. So yeah, it's it's not great. It's really, really not great, like, especially when you can consider that he is the 4th that she falls in love with. However, it doesn't appear that any of these men are in love with her for who she is. They are in love with her for what she can do for them. And by what she can do for them, I mean boosting their powers every day. So, I will not be reading the rest of this series. It's just bad. It's tropey. There's a lot of assault in it. It's not great. I did read this for the hardest reading challenge you'll ever do prompt subgenre of choice as fantasy erotica. However, I think I'll probably be replacing that because as it just wasn't as erotic as I was expecting it to be. So that may change. The next book I read was Cracks in a Marriage by Barbara Barrett. It is a mahjong mystery. I gave it 3.25 stars. It's a murder mystery. It gives cozy vibes. The vibes are Floridian though, because it does take place in a adult only community. I believe it's 55 and up. It might be 50 and up. And most of the characters are well into their 60s and 70s. So we join Sydney, Mickey, Kat, and Marianne, as they try to subvert the police and solve a murder before the police do, so that they can exonerate a fellow mahjong player that they don't really like. This should have been right up my alley. I love cozy mysteries, but it just fell short somehow. And my only explanation is the fact that they're 20 to 30 years older than me, and it just didn't vibe. It didn't feel fun. I don't know. I still can't really explain why. It was cute and cozy. They did surprise me with the reveal of the murderer, but I still felt kind of meh about the whole thing. So I read this for the TBR Harvest Prompt Signs of Death, as well as the hardest reading challenge you'll ever do prompt, Even Bigger Rainbow 7 Plus, because there's actually 9 colors on the cover. The next book I read was Under Fire by Kara Bristol. It is Alien Dragon Shifters, book number 1. I gave this 3.7 stars, and let me tell you, this book was flaming hot. No, I will not apologize for that pun. Sticking to it. I went into this with very low expectations, mainly because the last 2 books I read weren't great. However, these expectations were met and then exceeded. It was so much better than I thought it was going to be. It was so good. It, starts off a little trite, starts off like every other book with an Earth woman is set up to be the consort or breeding mate of such and such aliens who have come to Earth. However, it very, very quickly becomes something else entirely. The main plot is still, of course, this romance between a human woman and this alien dragon shifter. But secondary to that is some political intrigue slash court intrigue, not just between the royalty, because he is like a prince of the dragon, so there's royalty there, but also, of course, between aliens and humans, and then also the human government, specifically the United States government, shady. They are shady in this book and very suspicious and going behind the aliens' backs and then lying to their face. And it is the best portrayal of humans I have seen in a very, very long time in a book like this. And it just made me very happy, even though they're total crap. Uh, it's they're so bad, but it feels true to life. So uh, definitely going to be reading the rest of these books. Cannot wait. So I did read this for TBR Harvest Prompt, Fire on the cover, as well as the hardest reading challenge prompt, Become the Avatar, which has the fire word fire in the title. Okay, the next book I read was The Enchanted Greenhouse by Sarah Beth Durst. This is book 2 in the Spell Shop series, and just like the first one, 5 stars. Hands down, amazing book. It could be read as a standalone. The only issue is towards the very end, you will get a spoiler for the first book. So, depending on how you feel about it, it's not a big, it's a spoiler that you would expect, is all. So, you could read it as a standalone. You probably would get greater enjoyment from it reading The Enchanted Greenhouse second and The Spell Shop first. As with the first book, world building, dialogue, prose, characters, storyline, all amazing, all gorgeous and well thought out. There is a mystery surrounding why the enchanted greenhouse is failing. What is happening to it? Can it be fixed? How can it be fixed? Is it the right thing for a non sorcerer to do in a world where it would be illegal for her to do so? All things that are hit upon in this book. Like the first one, it takes a look at the difference between what is right and what is illegal, as those things are not always the same. While at times the internal argument with the main character is honestly a little bit grating and annoying, I do appreciate that we get to see that struggle. It isn't solved overnight, it is something that she works throughout the whole book, which does take place over a few months. I love seeing how these relationships and these characters grow, how the story just gets all tied up in a pretty little package with a bow, and I cannot wait for more books from Miss Durst. Just so good. I did read this for the hardest reading challenge you'll ever do prompt. New release. It was released in July, so I had 60 days to get it from my library and finish it. And I finished it with 10 days to spare, I believe. So I'm very excited about that. The next book I read was Kiss of Fire by Deborah Cook, Dragonfire series, book number one, 3.75 stars. Yes, it's another Dragon Shifter series, and yes, it was better than I expected it to be. Again, expectations were here. This book came in like up here. Two different factions of dragon shifters are fighting to overtake the other one with the help of a prophetess and a seer. Who knows which one is going to win? The main character Sarah has a very healthy dose of skepticism, which I very much enjoy in these like magical realism. Supernaturals have to hide their identities. Normally these main characters are just like, yeah, this could happen. Sure, why not? Sarah is like, well, wait. Okay, sure, you're a dragon shifter, but tarot cards? Tarot cards aren't real. Ghosts aren't real. Magic's not real. And she's got her priorities straight, right? Like, sure, this big thing may be true, but these little things, maybe not. It was A plus work. I really, really liked it. Uh, she felt really real. And a lot of times, these books don't have 3D characters, they have very 2D characters. So I really like it. Um, the book takes place in Michigan. I'm from Michigan. I'm a little biased. It's great. I loved it. I love that they incorporated like real world locations. However, however, you cannot talk about commuting from Ann Arbor to Traverse City. That is not a commute. That that's like a good 5 hour drive. Six hour drive? About 6 hour drives. If the weather's good. It's not always gonna be good in Michigan. That trip is gonna like double in the winter time. I'm sorry, I can't. Look, magic? Sure. Dragon shifters? Absolutely. Unrealistic drive times in a state that I know. Done. Immersion broken. I did get in an argument with the book about this. But I will be reading the rest of these books when I can. It was very good. I read this for TBR Harvest Prompt Orange cover, as well as the hardest reeling challenge you'll ever do prompt, Become the Avatar Part 2, because there is fire on the cover. So now I have fire in the title and fire on the cover, which, if I complete the whole set, is going to be bonus points. That's what I'm aiming for. The next book I read was Jack's Head by Siggy Shade, 4.7 stars. Look, this was recommended to me. And then I was told this book is very controversial. Everybody hates it. So I went and I read some reviews before I read the book, which I never do. And shh, quiet out there. Goodness. These reviews talked about wanting to gouge their eyes out, talked about wanting to bleach themselves, like pour bleach in their eyes, to bleach out their brain. They hated this book so much. Honestly, that got me a little excited. I really like reading books that people hate. I don't know what all the fuss is about. This book was great. Especially when compared with this one or even this one. It's great. Is it spicy? Yes. Was it like 90% sex, 10% plot? Yes. But we all should have been going into this book knowing that it was 90% sex and 10% plot. It wasn't that hard to figure out. I'm trying to decide if I want to give a spoiler here or not. It was delightful. It was just a little Halloween smut-filled story. She falls in love with the Headless Horseman. The ghost of the Headless Horseman. It's seriously, it's so good. It's so good. Um, I need. Okay, here's a little spoiler. If you don't want a spoiler, zoom ahead like 30 seconds, okay? So, here's the part that threw me for a loop. There was pony play, actual pony play with harnesses and blinders and reins, but by no means does that gouge my eyes out early. Also, the scene where he uses the handle of an axe on her to pleasure her on the hood of the car. Okay, maybe that's a little weird. Again, not gouge my eyes out worthy. And then also when he uses his two pistols simultaneously in her, still, I don't. Maybe I just read a lot worse books. Yeah, maybe. Okay. All right. Spoiler free now. Remember how I said that Succubus Lips was probably not going to be my entry for fantasy erotica? Yeah. This one overtook it. This one is now my entry for that, and Succubus Lips is my entry for the letter S in the A to Z challenge. The next book I read was Which Way to Murder and Mayhem by Jane Hinchy. This is book one of the Which Way Mysteries series. I did give this 3.5 stars. Now, I am normally really good about guessing the whodunit in a book. Don't worry about the previous books in this video. Apparently, I was having a rough 2 weeks. This one, though, completely baffled me. I was so surprised by it. And so instead of giving it the 3 stars, I did boost that up to 3.5. It was filled with magical types. Right off the bat, we had witches and fays. But then, like 2/3 of the way in, you find out that there's shifters and like multiple shifting types that are having a turf war in the town. And then one of the main character's best friends that you have met multiple times and spent a lot of time with is suddenly a vampire. Just right there, last third of the book. So it really felt rushed, and like all of these Fae types were being shoehorned in. Since then, in the last third, like everybody we met is a magical creature. It was good though. I don't know if I'll read the rest of the series. I did read this for the TBR Harvest Prompt Books on the Cover, as well as the hardest reading challenge you'll ever do prompt, the quote challenge. The next book I read was 100% Match by Patrick C. Harrison the third. I gave this 4.5 stars, but look, don't read this book. Just don't do it. Okay? If somebody recommends this to you, if Sam recommends this to you, do not read it. It is disgusting. It is gross. I nearly threw up multiple times. Don't do it, okay? But I didn't hate this book. I want to hate it, but I don't. It's weirdly well done. I have to give Harrison props for that. The main character repeats these facts to himself, like statistics. I want to know if those are real or if they're just made up. He is a disgusting man. He is gross. He has really bad habits, and he's a bad man on top of that. I mean, he's trying to find love. And the love interest is also very complex and a bad, 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 bad woman. And I want to know more about her. I want to read her book because I support women's rights, but most importantly, I support women's wrongs. They're a match made in heaven, really. They're just disgusting and gross and perfect together. I feel like this book is supposed to be an in-depth look at humanity because it doesn't come off as being written purely for like the shock and awe of it, but I don't know what it is supposed to be about. I don't know what it's supposed to make you think, but I'm thinking about it. I haven't stopped thinking about it in like 24 hours. So there's that. I did read this for the hardest reading challenge you'll ever do prompt, even bigger rainbow white, because the cover is mostly white, and I am not going to read a book and not put it on one of these challenges. And finally, I have read A Demon's Cocktail with Sambuca by Arizona Tape, who is writing as Ariana Jade. This is a part of the Forked Tale series / universe, but I don't know where it fits in because on their website they only list the original series. They don't list this book and the duology book that comes after it. So yes and no part of it. However, it is 5 stars. It is a cute and cozy sapphic romance about an angel and a demon falling in love. It's a very interesting world. The angels consume virtues. The demons consume sins. They have to harvest them from humans. Each sin or virtue is then can be either taken like raw, like straight, or it can be mixed into a drink or a food, and it adds flavor to that drink or food. It's such a cool world. Anyways, it is low stakes romance. There's no third act breakup. Hallelujah. There are some smutty scenes. Be aware of that. But it's great, and I cannot wait to read the rest of these. I did read this for the TBR Harvest prompt glass, as in little martini glasses on the cover, and the hardest reading challenge prompt, even bigger rainbow green. All right, currently I am reading Flux by Jinwoo Chong. It is a sci-fi about accidental time travel that is then used to cover up of violent crimes by corporations. Awesome. I am also reading A Day of Fallen Night by Samantha Shannon. This is the prequel to A Priory of the Orange Tree. It follows 4 women in 4 different countries and showing us a course of events that shapes their world for generations. I'm also reading Monstrous by Nicole Rubin. This takes place in a university for monsters, but somebody is killing them off one by one. Is it a monster? Is it a human? Hopefully we find out. My reading plans for September. R.F. Kuang's Cat at Basis. Haunting Adeline. Hunting Adeline, both by H.D. Carlton. Clever Girl, Jurassic Park by Hannah McGregor. Bound and Held by Isabel Taylor. Everything is Tuberculosis by John Green. and Yellowface by R.F. Kuang. Now, this list was made before I decided to join the TBR Harvest, and so I don't know what I'm going to get through. However, Catabasis is going to be my new release for August, which means I have to read it within 60 days of its release. So I have until like the end of October ish. Um, Clever Girl is a library book that is due back soon. I need to read this. And then Hunting Adelaide, Adeline, and Hunting Adeline are borrowed from a friend. So I really need to finish and get those back to her because she's kind of starting to harass me about it. So those are all priorities. Come back next Tuesday for this week's update. I'm going to try and put these out every Tuesday. Other than that, comment down below, subscribe if you want more. If you want to check out the Hardest Reading Challenge or the TBR Harvest, those links will be in the doobly-doo. Thank you for hanging out with me today, and come back for more.